What's up, guys? Welcome back to GTech Finance. My name is George, and so we're going to talk about, as the title says it, the new stimulus bill is out as it appears ready to be passed by the House of Representatives. It's 591 pages long. In this video, we are going to go through the actual text of the 1400 stimulus checks section. In future videos, maybe I will break down the other sections like child tax credits, unemployment benefits, rental assistance, and we'll go through to see what kind of changes there are. But for now, let's just talk about the stimulus checks. All right, folks, let's jump right into it then. So I'm just gonna open to the page 554 of the bill, and what it says is we will find the details for the 1400 stimulus checks. As usual, this will be a tax credit, and this will be a tax credit against your 2021 tax return, of course. And if you don't file and you're on SSI, SSDI, railroad retirement or benefits, you do not have to file. You are an eligible non-filer. But let's get into the nitty. Okay, the rebate amount as expected will be $1,400, and this is the bill as it's been put together. It just got released today by the House of Representatives. $1,400 if you're single, $2,800 if you're filing as a joint couple return, plus you will get $1,400 multiplied by the number of dependents you have now. That means all dependents, not child dependents. It means all. So if you have an 80-year-old adult but dependent, or a 20-year-old college student but dependent, or 5-year-old child dependent, as long as they are your dependent, they are eligible to get a $1,400 stimulus check for you, because it goes to you, and whoever's filing is the one getting the stimulus check. Now, an eligible recipient it's a little bit different from the second stimulus check. The difference here is any non-resident alien is, of course, not eligible. So if you do not have a social security number, in other words, you are not eligible for a stimulus check. You must have a social security number. There is one exception, we'll talk about it in a moment. If you are a dependent and you're filing your own taxes, but you're being claimed as a dependent, somebody else's taxes, you will also not get a stimulus check. Or if you are in a state or a trust, which you're not, because you wouldn't be listening to this since you're inanimate, you're not eligible either, but that's because social security numbers do not exist. So they're going to do that proportionally. So basically what that means is if you're a single filer, once you make over $75,000 a year, the amount of your check will start going down. And once you make an additional $25,000, in other words, once you hit $100,000 a year, you will go to $0 of eligible stimulus check. No matter how many dependents you have, you can have 20 children and be eligible for like 28,000 of stimulus checks. And that is right, 1,400. You'd be eligible for 1,400 times 20. That's $28,000 of stimulus checks. But your own, you would not get it as soon as your income hits $100,000. It will go down to zero. If your income is halfway between 75 and 100, you should expect to get roughly half of your stimulus check. And they're basically saying it's just going to scale from $75,000 to $100,000, going to zero. That's the phase out. And that's the new phase out. That's different from the prior stimulus check. If you are a head of household, and you will get 100% of what you're eligible for at $112,500. But after an additional $37,000, you hit $150,000. You go to a hard per year, then you'd go to a hard zero. Filing jointly, as soon as you hit $150,000, you will begin to lose your stimulus check benefits. And those will go to zero once you hit $200,000 of income. So it's between $150,000 and $200,000 if you're a household, and $75,000 to $100,000 if you're a dependent. And of course, you have to have a social security number to be eligible to file for a stimulus check. And your tax return, you will get $0 if it's you and your spouse, you have 3 children, you never applied for a social for them, you get $0 for the 3 children. But if you both have socials, you would get now joint returns. In the case of joint returns, $2,800. It's being treated as such that you will get $1,400 if only one spouse has a tax return. So this is good, because there were cases previously where a family might have an spouse and then the entire family was not eligible. But here they're basically saying, hey, as long as one of you has it, you'll still get that $1,400 for the spouse. And dependents, they will only be included if they have a valid social security number listed on the tax return. In theory, the way this is written, and I will verify this, but in theory, the way the written is, if both parents do not have a social, let's say, using it in, but the children do have socials, technically the way this looks, it's written the children would be eligible for a stimulus check, which would go to the filer, just the way this is written. So it seems like everything is being tied directly to social security numbers. So it's a really important detail. You've got to have a social, if otherwise it's going to be really hard to file for it. Social security numbers for adoption purposes. In the case of a dependent who is adopted or placed for adoption, the term valid identification number shall include adoption, taxpayer, identification number, special rule for the members of the armed forces. This rule that you have to have a social will not apply where at least one of the spouse was a member of the armed forces of the United States at any time during the taxable year, and the valid identification number of at least one spouse is included. So as long as one spouse has a social security number and was included on that tax return, and one of them was in the military, boom, you are eligible for a stimulus check. All right, let's move forward to some of the other sections. Here, this tax credit is refundable, which means if you have zero income, you still get to take advantage of getting the stimulus check. Then any individual who passed away before January 1, 2021 basically will not be eligible for a stimulus check. They'll be treated as basically having no social security number that is valid. Now, if someone passed away and they were in the military, the person who passed away was in the military, then the other spouse can still get treated as being eligible for a check. Now, in order to determine whether or not you are eligible for the stimulus check, the IRS is going to look at your 2019 tax return unless you've already filed your 2020 tax returns. And that tax return has been accepted by the IRS. So as soon as your tax return is accepted by the IRS and the IRS or Treasury Department says, okay, let's send you a stimulus check, they're going to go with your 2020 tax return. If they look to check if you're eligible for a check before your tax return actually gets accepted, they're going to use your 2019 data and sets up some interesting scenarios, because basically if your income went down in 2020 because of what's happening, then there's a chance maybe you weren't eligible for a stimulus check in 2019, but you are eligible in 2020. If you rush to file your taxes, maybe you'll get your stimulus check early. If your tax return gets in and accepted before the stimulus checks start coming out, if you miss that deadline and you're eligible for your 2020 checks, but your income was too high and they read off your 2019 tax returns, then you lose your eligibility, and then you will get your stimulus check on your 2020 tax returns, but you'll get it in 2022 when you file your 2021 taxes. So you'll get it next spring, basically. So there's an incentive if your income declined to file your taxes sooner. If, however, your income went up, in some cases in 2020, let's say you were eligible for a check in 2019, but you're not anymore in 2020 because your income went up, you might be tempted to wait to file your taxes till the April 15 deadline. And this is, of course, for the stimulus check purposes. Most of the child tax credits, for example, those are all beginning next year's tax return anyway. So your 2021 tax return, so those don't have anything to do with your 2020s. If you've received a stimulus check debit card, this section here says payments made by the Secretary to individuals under this section shall not be the form of an increase in the balance of any previously issued debit card, prepaid debit card. So in other words, they do not plan to reload the debit cards, which honestly, 3 stimulus checks, it kind of seems like a waste that they're not reloading them, but that's how it works. Another question that comes up, it has to do with garnishments, and basically bottom line, they're saying no garnishments. They say right here that any refund payable by reason of, well, the rules of the stimulus check shall not be subject to reduction or offset pursuant to the following sections here. You're welcome to look these up, as you should look these up to verify yourself, but my understanding of this is no, you can't get any stimulus check withheld for administrative claims. Administrative debts, child support, federal debts, or state debts. unemployment debts. Now, it's very likely it also means that banks can't garnish your money. I'm not 100% sure on that. That's what they used in the language last time. Those sections are so legally difficult. I'm going to go with the assumption that banks can't garnish either, especially since they're making it very clear they do not want any other garnishments to apply. Interestingly enough, there's also no mention of the word prison or incarcerated or guilty or incarceration. So the stimulus check language I could find, and I looked for it. So technically, if you're in jail, this bill kind of implies you would be eligible for stimulus check. I want to verify that again. I'm not so sure, and I don't want to confirm anything before I'm 100% sure of my research. So that's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It will be absolutely massive for the YouTube algorithm, and hope to see you guys next time.